Welcome to the Wellness Lab Digest, where we help you to absorb powerful, life-changing insights from top wellness experts with our daily bite-sized wellness podcast summaries. Each episode is packed with distilled, powerful takeaways to boost your health and well-being. To support this podcast, please scroll down on whatever app you're listening. Ratings and reviews are helpful. Even better, just send the show to a friend. Check out our sponsors at the bottom of the page, or simply click the Support the Show link below the episode description.
Perfectionism. A silent epidemic destroying our mental health? Well, not quite. Today we're discussing how the pursuit of perfection may actually be holding us back from living our most authentic lives.
Oh, wow. That's a provocative way to look at it. I'm intrigued to hear more about this perspective.
Well, it's a topic that's been on my mind a lot lately. You know, we often think of perfectionism as this admirable trait. But what if it's actually preventing us from truly connecting with ourselves and others? We're going to explore this idea through the story of someone who went from reality TV star to spiritual seeker.
That sounds like quite a journey. How did this transformation begin?
It all started in her teenage years. She was naturally introspective and even a bit melancholic, but she looked around and saw that wasn't how the cool kids behaved. She observed these seemingly perfect, happy girls who were liked by everyone, and she desperately wanted to be one of them.
I think that's a feeling many of us can relate to. The pressure to fit in during those formative years can be intense.
Absolutely, and for her, this desire to fit in led her to start hiding parts of herself. She began to cut away the aspects of her personality that didn't fit the mold of what she thought she should be. This continued into her early 20s when she started going out in London and eventually joined the cast of a popular reality TV show.
Wait, so she actually became a TV personality? That's quite a leap from being an introspective teenager.
It is, isn't it? But it shows just how far she was willing to go to fit this image she had in her mind. She thought that going out all the time and being liked by everyone was the key to happiness and belonging. But as you might guess, it wasn't that simple.
I can imagine. It must have been exhausting trying to maintain that facade all the time.
Absolutely. And it led to some pretty extreme behaviors. She turned to alcohol as a way to escape and to shapeshift into whoever she thought she needed to be in any given situation. She also developed an unhealthy relationship with food in her body, swinging between indulgence and deprivation with no middle ground.
That sounds really tough. Was there a moment when she realized something needed to change?
Well, there were a few moments, but a big one came when she was 27 and living in LA. She was pursuing a music career, but she felt frozen, like time was running out. One day, she had a panic attack while driving to the studio. She had to pull over because she couldn't breathe. It was a wake-up call that something needed to change.
Wow, that must have been terrifying. What did she do after that?
She decided to return to London, but her struggles didn't end there. She continued to put out music, and on the surface, things were going well. But something still felt off. It wasn't until she turned 30 and went through a difficult breakup that things really started to shift.
So what was the turning point?
Interestingly, it came during a session with a healer. She went to address the breakup, but the conversation took an unexpected turn. The healer asked her what she did for a living, and when she said she was a singer, the healer looked at her and said, "It's not resonating in your body."
Oh, wow, that's pretty direct. How did she react to that?
Surprisingly, she felt a sense of relief. It was like someone had finally given voice to something she knew deep down but hadn't been able to admit to herself. It was the push she needed to really examine what she truly loved and wanted to do.
That's fascinating. It's amazing how sometimes we need that external permission to make a change, even when we know deep down something isn't right.
Exactly. And it led her to start exploring things she was genuinely passionate about: poetry, astrology, spirituality, and creating community. She described it as feeling like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders.
That sounds incredibly freeing, but I imagine it wasn't all smooth sailing from there. How did people in her life react to this shift?
You're right. It wasn't easy. She faced a lot of confusion and even some pushback from people who couldn't understand why she'd want to leave behind her seemingly successful career. People would say things like, "You're so lucky, this is amazing," referring to her previous life in the spotlight. and she felt guilty for wanting something different.
I can see how that would be challenging. It's hard to go against what others expect of you, especially when they think you're living the dream.
Absolutely, but she had this deep, intuitive knowing that something was off, and she couldn't ignore it anymore. So she started the process of building a new life that felt more authentic to her.
What did that process look like?
Well, she started with therapy, which gave her a good foundation. Then she took a solo trip to Australia where she did yoga every day and focused on healing. When she came back, she dove into practices like breathwork, sound baths, and free movement. She also found comfort in esoteric practices like tarot and working with moon cycles.
That's quite a transformation. How does she feel now compared to her reality TV days?
She describes it as night and day. Back then, all her goals were about external validation, being liked, looking perfect, achieving certain milestones. Now she understands that doing what lights you up internally is how you find your purpose. It doesn't have to be some huge, impressive thing. It's just about being authentically you.
That's such an important message. I think so many of us get caught up in trying to achieve these external markers of success without realizing that true fulfillment comes from within.
Exactly. And she's quick to point out that it's not about being ecstatically happy all the time. It's more about finding a sense of ease and contentment. Difficult things still happen, but she has a different relationship with herself now that allows her to navigate those challenges.
That sounds like real growth. It's inspiring to hear about someone who's been able to make such a profound change in their life.
It really is, and I think one of the most interesting aspects of her story is how she's come to view perfectionism. She realized that her drive to be perfect was really about a deep-seated belief that she needed to be perfect, to be loved, and to belong.
Oh, that's such a common struggle. I think so many of us can relate to that feeling.
Absolutely, and she points out that perfectionism is often applauded in our society. You know, when people are asked about their weaknesses in job interviews, they often say, "Oh, I'm a perfectionist." But she came to see how toxic that mindset can be.
That's so true. We tend to view perfectionism as a positive trait, but it can be incredibly damaging.
Exactly. And for her, it led to this cycle of trying to control everything, feeling like she'd failed when she inevitably couldn't be perfect, and then engaging in destructive behaviors as a result. It was a never-ending cycle that left her feeling constantly inadequate.
It sounds exhausting. How did she start to break out of that cycle?
Well, a big part of it was learning to practice self-compassion. She had to learn to treat herself with kindness and understanding rather than harsh criticism. And she had to start challenging the belief that she needed to be perfect to be worthy of love and belonging.
That's such important work. It's not easy to change those deep-seated beliefs about ourselves.
No, it's not. And she's very open about the fact that it's an ongoing process. She still has moments of doubt or fear, but they don't take center stage anymore. She's learned to recognize those thoughts and feelings without being controlled by them.
That's really powerful. It sounds like she's developed a much healthier relationship with herself.
Absolutely. And I think one of the most inspiring aspects of her story is how she's using her experiences to help others. She's now a podcast host and author, focusing on topics like self-discovery and navigating the challenges of early adulthood.
That's amazing. It's always inspiring to see someone turn their struggles into something positive that can help others.
I couldn't agree more. And I think her story highlights something really important, that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to happiness or success. What works for one person might not work for another, and that's okay.
Absolutely. It's so important to find what resonates with you personally, rather than trying to force yourself into someone else's mold.
Exactly. And as we wrap up, I think it's worth highlighting one last thing she said. She talked about how the victory is in the doing, not in the outcome. It's about having the courage to make changes and try new things, regardless of how they turn out.
That's a great perspective. It takes a lot of the pressure off and allows us to focus on growth and learning rather than just results.
Absolutely. And I think that's a message we could all benefit from hearing more often. Life isn't about achieving some perfect end state. It's about the journey of becoming more authentically ourselves. And that journey is different for everyone.
Well said. This has been such an inspiring conversation. It really makes you think about your own life and the changes you might want to make.
I couldn't agree more. And I hope our listeners take away that message of hope and possibility. No matter where you are in your life, it's never too late to start listening to that inner voice and making changes that align with who you truly are. It might not be easy, but as we've heard today, it can lead to a much more fulfilling and authentic life.
Thank you for listening to the Wellness Lab Digest. If you have received value from the podcast, I have 3 asks of you. 1, share the show with your friends and send them a link to the show. 2, please leave a rating and review in whatever app you're listening. And last but not least, please let me know what topics you would like us to cover in the future. You can contact me by sending me a message using the Send Us a Text link below the episode description.